Good morning, Leadwerks engineers. Today we have a very exciting episode of Weekend Workshop. We're going to review some things before the Leadwerks 5 launch and talk about continued development in quite a lot of detail actually today. I usually don't go into a lot of roadmaps, but I'm gonna lay some things down and more explicitly than I usually do because I'd say we have better information now. Okay, so the first thing that's going to happen is Ultra Engine will exit early access, and then shortly thereafter, Leadwerks Game Engine will be updated to version 5. Now, if you have Leadwerks already, you probably don't need Ultra Engine. You'll probably get it anyways. So don't feel any pressure to buy that if you already have Leadwerks. I think that's probably how I think that's how it's going to work out. Um, and we pretty much I'll talk more in depth about everything that Leadwerks 5 adds next week because it's quite a lot, especially if you're just coming from 4.6. It's a lot, and I'd like to review everything and like all of the huge improvements that it makes. Um, but I think everybody here right now is pretty familiar with that. So I want to talk about the plan for after 5.0 goes out. Um, so we're in the middle of October right now. There's not a lot of time until Christmas. So, I mean, it's basically like 2 months until Christmas. That's not really enough time for me to start and finish any major features. I might be able to, but there's a good chance. I'd say there's like a 50-50 chance that I would have it done before Christmas. Um, and if it's not done before Christmas, then it's like I don't really have anything new for you by at the end of the year. I would like to have something new for you at the end of the year. Um, so I think what we're gonna this is gonna be for the rest of the year. It's gonna be like just no major features. It's just gonna be like small improvements as we find they are needed. I have a few things in mind, and I'm sure you will have other suggestions as you are using the software. Um, there are some more features I would like to add to the VR template and the first person shooter template, like VR locomotion and maybe some more weapons and more features and stuff in the FPS shooter. Develop it more into like a full open source game, basically. And of course, I have a lot of tutorials in mind. Now, at the beginning of next year, that's when I plan on um, like developing a major new feature. The first thing I want to do is I want to try moving the lighting into a deferred step. It's not really a new renderer. It's just I'm just basically like moving the location of some shader code. It's basically the same code. So it's mostly copy and paste, and then adjust everything to make it work. I've worked so currently we're using a technique called clustered forward plus rendering, which is something that id Software uses in all their latest technology. um, I believe one of the newer, like the newest Rainbow Six game, I think uses this, and I think Call of Duty does too, like one of the latest ones. Um, and it's got some advantages. It's also I feel the way that we use the engine and the kind of games I want to make. I think it might have some disadvantages. The major advantage is that like with deferred rendering, you have to render to a bunch of different textures, and those consume memory, and those that incurs a performance penalty. Um, the clustered forward plus renderer doesn't really need that. So if you're in a situation where you have no post processing effects and just one directional light, then I actually think the clustered forward plus renderer would be faster than a deferred renderer in most cases. Probably on most hardware it would be faster. Um, However, if you add SSAO, an SSAO post processing effect, well, what does that involve? That means you need to output to a normal texture, okay? If you have glass refraction, like transparency refraction enabled, that has to output to some other textures. So now if you have those two post-processing effects enabled, then you've sort of eliminated the advantages that the clustered forward plus approach has. And then but it still has to do an extra Z pass, an early Z pass, and it has more expensive pixel shaders. So in that situation, now you have kind of the downsides of both of them. So it really depends on the situations, the situation you're in. I think when all the effects are turned up all the way, and you have a lot of lights near the camera, like in the foreground, and a lot of lights and decals, I think in that situation the deferred renderer will come out faster. I can't say for sure. It's hard, and it's even hard to compare them both like exactly side by side, but I believe it would probably be faster. There's now for transparency, there's still stuff I can do. I can just render the transparency after the deferred lighting and just pass all the lights that affect that object and just limit it to like the four closest lights that affect that object, and just render that like in the shader code itself, and then we'd still have transparency with lighting. So other advantages I feel the deferred lighting might have are, well, it makes the shader code a lot more compartmentalized because all the lighting code is in one place, and it makes the fragment shaders a lot easier to work with for me. Volumetric lighting, it gives me a little bit more control because if I want to, I can render the volumetric lighting effect as part of each light itself. So that might be a good option to have. Previously, I've seen only on NVIDIA hardware, I've seen some vertex motion effects. Even when it was executing the same exact code, I wasn't getting the same depth output in the early Z-Pass and the final render. And so as a result of that, like it wasn't allowing me. I wanted to add like some vertex movement, and I wasn't able to. And I could probably go back and, like, if I need to, file a bug report with NVIDIA and wait for that to get fixed, or maybe it's my mistake, but it only happens on NVIDIA cards for some reason. Or I could just skip all that and just, I know that the deferred lighting approach does not require the early Z pass, so I know that problem just automatically goes away. So that's a little bit easier. And it's also a lot easier to add new light types because the data structures that the clustered forward plus renderer uses are it's these data structures in GPU memory that are very, like, impossible to debug. It would make things a lot easier for me to add additional light types in, or to customize the lighting a little bit more. So those are the reasons for it. I think overall it'll end up being it'll give us better results. And now I know why, in great detail, like which approach I probably prefer. I'm being a little bit like cautious with my language here because I never know. I've worked with this technique extensively. In fact, Leadwerks was the second commercial product in the world that I'm aware of to even use it. Stalker, Shadow of Chernobyl, they came out about 6 months before Leadwerks had a deferred renderer. But we were the first general purpose game engine that used deferred rendering at all. And people said I was crazy when I did that, but now it's like one of the industry standards. Of course, clustered forward plus is also a viable option. So that's what I'm planning in 5.1. And that'll probably, once I start that means the engine will probably be in the shop for at least 6 weeks. So that means there'll be like a period where there's just not going to be any updates. Or if you do opt into the beta during that period, there'll probably be some stuff that's not working temporarily. So I'm not. That's why it's like I don't want to start that right now because there's a good chance it might not be done in time for Christmas. And I want to be able to be like more responsive to the things that people need like immediately as they start using Leadwerks 5. But that'll be a really good update for 5.1. Okay, now for 5.2 and beyond, um, these are the things, these are like the big features that I have in mind. There's a lot of smaller features that just aren't worth like, if it's something that doesn't take me more than a week, then it's not really, you know, it's just something that I do when it's convenient and I have time. But the big features I'm planning that I really want to do are global illumination light mapping. What I want to do is separate out the indirect lighting and use light maps for that. I might experiment with using light maps for the direct lighting on some surfaces. Yeah, I'm no longer I was a big proponent of dynamic lighting I was one of the early. I mean, I didn't invent deferred rendering. I mean, it was in academic papers and tech demos before that, but I mean, I was one of the very early pioneers who started using it. Absolutely. So I've been a proponent of dynamic lighting for the longest time, but when it comes to global illumination, indirect lighting, we've had 20 years to figure it out, and everything sucks. I look at what Unreal Engine has done. They have a lot of like temporal artifacts and just like the accumulation, the light accumulation is so bad. Like I was watching like a video of like Stalker 2, and it's like he was standing inside a building, and then he just like stepped to the left to look out a window into a field, and like you could see over the course of like 10 seconds, you could see the lighting in the pretty not very far distance. You could see the lighting just sort of like come into focus, and it's just so bad. Even NVIDIA's own like RTX stuff, like plain Portal RTX actually convinced me that ray tracing was a bad idea. Just because of the temporal artifacts, and a lot of people attribute that to temporal anti-aliasing, but I think it's actually the light accumulation, which is like just part of the ray tracing stuff. And the reason for that is because GPUs can't do real-time ray tracing. They can't. They would have to be, in order to, so the only thing they can do is they can store the current light value for that area of the scene and reuse it and improve that image over time. But it's not real time. Like GPUs would have to be about 100 times faster in order to actually make that real time. And the performance is terrible. The visuals are not fantastic, and the temporal artifacts are horrendous. So for that reason, baked indirect lighting combined with dynamic shadow maps, actually that's actually like very appealing to me. I'm like, wow, this is way better in my opinion. And I just think about like my own game I'm working on, and it's like, would I want to release it with that? No. I don't want my players to. Yeah, I'm sure like other, some developers will like pat me on the back and tell me that I'm making very wise decisions, but the players don't want to see that. They don't like it. Anyways, non-solid brushes. So this is basically like level geometry that doesn't have to follow the strict rules of convex objects. So this would allow you to just like, drag out like a spline shape and have that form the shape of a wall. Stuff like that. Also, like, like being able to do the some of the terrain stuff that, like, what is it called, the weird terrain stuff that like Dear Esther does. Um, we've talked about it here before. Rope physics, that's actually like pretty easy to do. I have some vehicle code for use with Newton that works very well. It's just integrating it is going to take some time. And along with that, of course, roads would be the perfect companion feature to go with that. Um, I want to lower the system requirements so that Intel graphics are supported. I might do more work in the future to support lower system requirements, because I think for our SCP game, I think a large portion of the fan base is going to be using older hardware for that. So I'd like the graphics to go up to, the maximum level that I think they can reasonably go to without it being wasteful. Which I think ray tracing is an example of, like, where it's just not really a good idea. And then at the same time fall back to the lowest possible, so they can get a decent experience on the lowest possible cards, which apparently, like, Leadwerks 5 runs on a 960. I didn't even know that Leadwerks 4 would run on those. I thought the 10 series was actually the minimal requirement for Leadwerks 4.
Leadwerks 4 ran on a 750 with me.
Did it?
Not well. Yeah.
Wow.
It's running on a friend of mine's system who's actually running a 600 series, so
How low can we go? Wow. I didn't know those had Shitter Model 4 support. Yeah, it's kind of like, it seems like kind of like graphics were like advancing very, very quickly. For, like, during between like 2000 and 2010 or so. And then it seems like they a lot of stuff, like most of the stuff since then hasn't really been, it's just been very, like, incremental improvements. So it does seem like the pace of how quickly real-time graphics is improving is greatly slowing down. So there's no reason to throw away a lot of old hardware that's still viable. Windows 11. So Linux and Mac support, of course, are on the table, and C# programming support, of course, would probably be helpful to a number of people. So that is the most detailed roadmap I've ever put out, actually. These are the things I think, these are like the big headlining features that I think are important. And there's a bunch of other, like, smaller things that I think we can also work in here. But that's what I'm thinking. Of course, every, development is always, like, prone to change. Nothing is set in stone, but this is what I've got in mind, kind of. Okay, so before we go on, Resonant Dusk is scheduled to release Monday. And we've still got a couple of days to add this to your wish list and help the develop. Let's all add this to our wish list. See, it's on my wish list. Let's help the developer out, because the more wish lists he has, the better his launch will be. He updated the trailer, it looks like. I like this. Perfect for October. Perfect game to play through. Resonant Dusk on Steam. Please add this to your wish list. This looks pretty fun actually. I'm going to play all the way through it. Okay, Leadwerks 5 is canceled. I'm gonna play this instead. Yeah, so Resonant Dusk, add it to your wish list. Help your fellow developer out, please. Okay, so before we continue, do we have any questions about any of that? It's quite a lot.
I do have one question regarding your lighting that you had mentioned. So are you looking into a hybrid system with RTX features or anything under OpenGL 4.6 or no?
It's possible, but like nobody wants it.
I mean, I want it. Well, I would assume a lot of people would want to have that advanced feature to do like a scaling raycasting or something into the scene. But the question is it actually a valuable asset or anything that you're considering?
It's possible. I mean, you can do it, but it's like if anything, I'd say I probably get like 10 times more requests like in the opposite direction. I get a lot more requests for like Intel integrated graphics and like low end GPUs.
Oh,
I
I was
get
gonna. Josh, I forgot to tell you. So I just messaged that friend of mine. So he's running Escape Land, which I don't know what version of Leadworks it's on. He's running on a 650, so it does work. You
geez,
can
yeah,
do it.
that's 4.6.
Yeah. You did a good job, man. Bravo.
Let's see. Yeah, the denoising. Yeah, the denoising, the ray accumulation. It just
Well, I don't know if you've gone through the NVIDIA specs for denoising, but there are optimized algorithms that if you use it with something like standard like shadow mapping or anything else, you can actually kind of cover it up pretty well.
Oh, what's
But especially if you stack it with like a baked lighting situation, if you have like a static light, that works pretty well too. That way you just get the dynamic shadows and everything without having to use a shadow map. But yeah, I understand the need for lower end hardware, so you'd have to have a hybrid system.
splines. Dumage asks. Yeah, basically. Sorry, I think Broodworks. Were you saying something? I think his microphone is not the best quality. I think he's on his phone. It sounds like. You can also type in the chat. ML the storyteller is typing something. Yeah, well, we fixed both of those issues in Leadworks 5. The performance is a lot faster in Leadworks 5. Of course, that means if you have decent hardware, like a I'd probably recommend like an AMD 6600, which is not an expensive card, as like the middle. That's kind of like the minimum recommended card, I would say, because those the PBR fragment shaders do require a lot more calculations. Um, and I eliminated the OpenAL dependency. Um, I'm using the software version of it, so it's just built into the engine and it doesn't require the OpenAL installer.
Can I ask you, like, so with Leadworks 5, you said that, so with Ultra Engine, are you merging Ultra Engine license or whatever with Leadworks now, or what's going on with that?
So, um, people prefer the name Leadwerks, and it's more recognizable. And I kind of realized talked about this for a really long time, like a while ago, like a few like when I realized this, like you're not allowed to invent anything. Like everything that was invented after 2015 is perceived to be a scam. Like think can you think of a game franchise or a movie or a music band that has come out since 2015?
The only thing I would say is like the Disney work with like Mandalorian and Star Wars, what they did
Star
the
Wars, it was
wraparound
big,
stuff.
so that
Yeah,
goes back to the 1970s.
yeah, that's true. That's an
Where's
older
the popular
franchise.
science fiction series that was invented since 2015? Maybe Black Mirror. Television shows seem to be an
Yeah.
exception to this, actually, for some reason. Like television shows, you're allowed to, but like movies, you're not allowed to like. So, anyways, um,
I didn't mean to derail. Sorry, my dude.
well, my theory is that um, it seems like it almost seems like there's just this rule that like after 2015 you're not allowed to like do anything new, like no one, it just won't register if it like things are only real if it was invented, prior to 2016 or so.
Also,
Minecraft, Roblox,
yeah.
like everything that was in, like as soon as the Vulcan spec dropped, that was it. Like after that, it's like okay, nothing new after this. Everything has to be a sequel from now on. So in other words, like it's really hard. I found that it's extreme. Like it's extremely hard to introduce a new brand or a new name. Um, and Leadworks, it may get misspelled and mispronounced sometimes, but everybody knows what it is, and um, yeah, it's weird. Like
I will say one thing, Josh. There, I've been directing people to Leadworks because I've seen what the engine can do, and I think it's a good idea that not that you're abandoning it, but that you're moving. Ultra kind of is a generic name, so Leadworks, the way it's spelled, gives people an idea of a brand, and it gets people interested.
Well, also, it also has its own identity. So when the name change happens, the interface got a revamp because a lot of people, one thing, fun came a lot when people thought of Legworks. People thought of game jams. People thought of, community. So the UI reflects that. It's not this
mm,
grayscale interface. It's blue. It has all these fun colors. The
Hi,
icons
Ivan.
are colorful. Um, and also, yeah, like, and of
yeah,
course, like,
you're right. Actually, like once we did that, it was like it also did sort of like change the product a bit because it was like, at that point, like 6 months ago, we didn't have a built-in IDE, and it was like, okay, well, if this is Leadworks, it needs to have like everything that you need to make your game needs to be included. I can't have people going off to install these weird plugins for Visual Studio Code. It needs to be like everything you need right there, like ready to go. So yeah, it just worked out better. Like Leadworks was, I didn't realize like what a strong brand Leadworks was, um, and I was using my brain too much and not, just like I don't, when you like overthink things. And it's like I just like so many times people go, oh, Leadworks. That looks like that's an interesting name.
yeah, and
Um,
also you have
But that's
20 years of history with it too, going back to
uh,
2006.
well, I mean,
there's a friend of mine who
I
said
pulled the
that.
Leadworks name out of my ass, and like that one's real, but another one is fake.
Yep.
Yeah, I have
I
a
just
friend of
make
mine
these
on
things up.
Steam, Josh.
Huh?
He said a friend of mine on Steam, and when I was talking with him, I was introducing him, and I said, "You got to check out Leadworks." I said, "This guy Josh is doing this fantastic engine," and he kept calling it Leadworks the whole time, and he kept misspelling it.
Yeah.
He's a fan, dude. I'm directing people to it because he
Oh,
got something
I
good there.
appreciate it. But yeah, there are. So I love Leadwerks, and it looks like the name chose me. I don't choose the name. The name chooses me, and yeah, I guess I just sort of like accidentally created a very strong brand. You know what it is uh, when I thought of that name, it was from the perspective of the end user. Because I was like, what do I think is cool? Oh, that sounds cool. Yeah, that's what I think. That's what it is. I didn't pick the name as like a business owner or trying to think of what would appeal to people. I just picked something because it appealed to me at the time. I thought it sounded cool. And then I learned that it broke like a lot of rules of a good brand name, but whatever. There are things worse than having people misspell or mispronounce your name. Having nobody remember it. That's a lot worse. Metalworks.
I was gonna ask you something about like wait with your renderer that you're doing for lighting. So are you just defaulting back to like the standard like projected light maps and all that, or like what are you gonna have like a cumulative kind of light system? I'm not fully familiar with Ultra Engine. Or sorry, with Leadworks. I mix up the two. Sorry. But
At least you pronounced it right. So we actually in Leadworks 5 actually there's like four types of light that affect every single pixel. So you have direct lighting, which that's simple enough. Then you have that uses shadow maps, by the way, and then you have indirect lighting, which is used with that uses. No, I'm sorry. You have direct diffuse lighting, and then you have direct specular lighting. Um, and those are both using shadow maps, and then you have indirect lighting, and that can be categorized both as diffuse and specular. So there's four components, right? Um, Direct lighting, both diffuse and specular, are shader based. So that's just calculated dynamically in the shader. And then you have indirect lighting, which is currently it's provided entirely by environment probes. These render a small cube map for the area, and then you have a lot of settings to like blend the two zones together, so you get a smooth transition between your lighting, indirect lighting. So that handles diffuse indirect lighting, which is just sort of like a general glow of how light things are like bouncing off the walls.
I assume when you're saying you have the probes, are you using that same like cube map area to do part of the PBR for the textures on models and stuff?
That's what PBR is. Yes.
Yeah. So
And
you're
then
basically
you also
yeah.
have the specular. You also have indirect specular lighting, which is reflections.
Yes. Okay,
Okay.
that's all I was really asking. Well, that's actually something I was wondering about, like the future of Leadworks is if you get into like RTX, ray tracing, ray casting, and so on, or really path tracing technology. There's an interesting thing there. You can there's a lot of there's two papers that have been published. I think CD Project Red actually published one, or at least co-authored it or something, where they talked about how they converted from the light probe method to the RTX system. That I don't know if you're familiar with it. I can probably send it to you in a DM if you're
Oh, yeah,
interested
that'd be
later.
great.
But yeah.
Okay. So
I'm just curious if you considered those possibilities
yeah,
to
sure.
for like
Actually,
a hybrid
that's
rendering
actually okay.
system.
Let me explain. Okay, now for indirect specular, which is reflections. Um, okay, so that always has to be in the probe right now, or it can be used, or if screen space information is available. If screen space reflection is enabled, then it uses that data preferentially over the probes. So it kind of, if you enable screen space reflection, then it will it'll use the screen space reflection when it's available, and when it's not, it'll fall back to the probes. So that gives you a pretty good combination of like dynamic objects and, fall back to the probes when you don't have that, when it's a reflection of something outside of the scene. Okay, now the part that I'm interested in replacing with light maps is the indirect diffuse component of all of that. So it's only 1/4 of the equation, but that would give us very nice indirect lighting on big flat surfaces, basically. Okay, now what you're talking about with RTX reflections, that's actually the thing that RTX is best at.
Yes,
Because
that's what I was
it
getting
it requires the fewest rays.
Yes, and it requires the fewest amount of memory that you have to store it in as you're doing the calculations, and the fewest amount of compute.
Yeah, that probably makes sense. So that is probably the first place I would start. Is say, okay, well, if you have ray tracing enabled, then the specular reflection is now going to be replaced. All the other stuff is going to stay the same for now, but that part we can give you better reflections. Like that is.
I'm posting something on the side for you, Josh. You can take a look at it. The RTX kit, if you go through it, actually covers a lot of that. It's actually pretty interesting because I built my own demos out of it.
I have not seen this yet, but I will check it out. I've read a lot of it.
It's from 2022, but it's that's what I was asking mostly.
Yeah. So yeah, like the idea of like completely replacing all lighting with especially like indirect lighting with ray tracing, I don't think that goes very well. I'm not very impressed.
I would just say stick with shadow maps at that point. You get a lower cost on computational, and you have lower cost on memory, and you have lower cost on everything. You just do like general shadow maps or something like a forward renderer or a deferred renderer for the lighting system. Then from there, you can just do light probes, cube maps, and so on. They don't take much memory. I mean, you're talking a couple 100 kilobytes at that point, maybe a megabyte or two. So, yeah, that's what I was mostly trying to understand. And I would I would say look into it. The NVIDIA RTX thing in the future might be something later.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. Any other questions from anybody before we continue? Because I got a lot more stuff.
Yeah, keep going. I'm going to mute myself.
All right. So, okay. So we were getting a lot of requests for like, people were saying, well, I want a tutorial to make a game menu. I want to make a menu to display options for my game. And I just went ahead and added it to the default template. So now when you run your game, it'll just show you you've got like a little window, a panel with like options for all the different effects and all the different settings. So, and this is the code that it takes to do that. This also handles like saving and loading your game settings to a file automatically. But that is the code that it takes to make that work. About 700 lines of code. And this is just included when you create a new project. It's just packed away in this one file. Would this have made a good tutorial?
No, because UI programming is tedious and boring.
I think it's thrilling and fun, actually, but I enjoy it. But
it's not good video. You know what I mean?
Well,
like people want guns.
Like I could spend a week going through this code and being like, quit dialogue. Okay, now I need to create a dialogue for when you press the quit button. So first I'm going to create the quit panel. So I call this create panel. And then I'm going to create a label, and the label is going to say, are you sure you want to quit? This tells the player, gives the player the opportunity to press the yes button if they are sure that they want to quit, or if they're not sure and they want to go back to the game, then they can press the no button. That's what this, so we have the OK quit button and the cancel quit button. Okay. Next we have the options dial. I mean, is anybody still listening?
Nope. That's why I said no. It's really
No,
cool.
I'm listening. I'm actually watching and listening at the same time. But like, I know exactly what Reef's getting at because I don't think you're gonna go over people's heads trying to show them the code like that, dude. No offense to everybody here, you know. But...
No, like you're definitely gonna have people need Subway Surfer to pay attention to that.
Right. My feeling is that if I actually did that, it would take me a long time to record.
Right.
And then I don't think it would be very interesting to people.
Wait. Somebody like me, if you made, actually, that's an idea for you. If you made like a series where you went over how the systems work and systems integrations, I would watch that. I don't think many people would, but I would. I'd be interested in that. I'd love to see it.
It sounds. I think what I okay. So okay. I think. We had somebody. We had somebody recently. They said, "I want a tutorial on how to make an inventory system." I think this happened yesterday, and I was like, "Well, I mean, you need just you create an interface, and then you need to decide like what objects are gonna can be crafted can be combined together to craft them, and you just need to detect the mouse event when you drag something onto another thing." And they were like, no, let me show you. And they showed me a video from like I think it was Game Guru, and the video was basically, it wasn't a tutorial, it was just the guy talking about the feature. And it was basically like, you know, it was basically like a video of somebody talking about the button to press to create an inventory. And I was like, okay, so this is just a feature that's that's already built into it. It's not something you actually
got a
coded
message
with
there,
the commands.
Josh.
What's that?
Emil, look in the side chat.
Yeah. And returns this 20 FPS when you get a lot of widgets there. Well, I mean, frames, like 20 frames per second relative to what? Yeah, it got faster in Leadwerks 5. Anyways, yeah.
Wait, I actually have a question now. I want to ask you something there. It says what Reap says is he says drawings are cost in Leadwerks 4. So in Leadwerks 5, how do the draw calls work when you're doing like an overlay? Is it pulling from the shader, or are you doing just a direct like menu? If I wanted to, could I load something like just a simple HTML or XML script or something into it?
It uses basically the way it works is we have a 2D tile object that you create. It's basically like a rectangle. Everything's basically a rectangle or a block of text. And it just goes through and it does it as fast as it possibly can. I don't pay as much attention to like the speed of 2D drawing, because it's usually not that important. You know, of course it's always important, but like I don't like try to hyper optimize that. Initially I did, and so it like setting up 2D drawing was a lot more complicated. You had to create a separate camera, and then instead of it actually it rendered everything in batches, but it used the depth buffer to decide which was on top. And that could be super fast if you had like thousands and thousands of different 2D primitives that you're drawing. But in the end, like everybody just wanted it to be simple to use. So it just uses one shader and then sets the one shader that it's using, and then at the end of a camera or a frame buffer, it just draws all the primitives that are attached to that camera, or you can just attach it directly to the frame buffer. But I believe it will be quite a lot faster than Leadwerks 4.
I'm still wondering what the 20 FPS means, so I don't know what he meant by that.
He's saying his I think he's saying his frame rate reduced by 20 frames per second.
Yeah.
Yeah, but from what factor? Because
Yeah,
like
When
from
he pulls his inventory up, so that means like he's showing the interface and it's displaying all those widgets. And since Leadwerks 4 is single threaded, it has to take time to render everything.
Oh, yeah,
Wait,
that's
wait,
another
wait,
factor too.
Oh, so wait, is Leadworks 5 multi-threaded or
Extensively.
extensively? Okay.
Yeah, it's using like, I don't know, it could be using like 12 threads at any given time.
You
it uses
ain't
as
inking my
many
chain on
threads as
that?
you have.
Okay. I mean, I got 36 threads. I mean,
It'll use them all.
let's go, baby. Use it all? Hell yeah, dude. Wait.
Okay, so yeah, it's like, okay, so anyways, I was talking about the inventory system he was asking about, and it's like he wasn't asking for a tutorial to make an inventory system. That wasn't a tutorial request. That was a feature request, right? Because if I made I've written an inventory system for the game I'm working on right now. We have an inventory system with crafting, and if I walked through that code and made it a quote unquote tutorial, it would be something like this, just me, and now here I'm blah 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 blah. So for things like an inventory system, I'm wondering if maybe that's just a feature that the default template should have. Like, it's easier for me to just go ahead and program that and include it in the default template, and then, it just opens up if you press the tab button, if you have it enabled. Like, it's a lot easier for me to just add it as a feature than to, like I did with the menu system here, rather than me trying to explain to you how to invent a new menu system and then you having to understand it and having to implement it yourself and hoping that it works, and then guess what, it doesn't, and then your system is a little bit different from everybody else's. Like, it's like some of that stuff, like it's just a lot easier for me to just implement it in the default template. And I feel like an inventory system is complex enough and boring enough that would probably fall into that category of things. I feel like I have to be very, very careful how I spend my time on tutorials, because they take a lot of time and I don't want to waste time on things that are not effective. What do you guys think about that?
The only thing I'll say there is, I think if you actually went over like these systems and you created like a separate series on your channel, you would probably get more people interested who actually want to get involved. Like, I'm actually looking into purchasing Leadwerks now because of your talks. I've been watching everything that Reap sends me, so and I'm in a position now where I can actually do it, and I want to work with the engine. But I think if you went over this stuff more, where you went to system management and you went to how you can actually integrate with the engine, those would be very useful aspects that people can work with, and it would help a lot of people out.
Okay. Maybe that's a video on my YouTube channel, but does that belong here in my official how to learn how to make video games that I'm trying to be very, very concise with. Okay, so like I enjoyed university quite a lot. I really just liked going to class and learning. Um, and the best professors I had were the ones who just wrote their own book. And they would have like, it would be like, 100 pages or so, and that would just be the whole thing for the quarter or the semester. Um, and their information was extremely concise, and they knew exactly, like, they wrote all their own materials, and they knew exactly what they wanted to communicate, and they knew exactly what they wanted me to learn. My worst professors were the ones who just said, yeah, just read chapter 1, read chapter 3. It's 60 pages on organic chemistry. So anything that's in the book could be on the test. And at the time, I thought they were just being like a very challenging teacher. Like, oh, you have to be so smart for this person. But no, it's because they didn't know what questions were on the test, and they didn't want to be held accountable for, if it turned out that they didn't cover something that was on the test. They didn't want to be held accountable for it because they didn't really want to be teaching. They wanted to be in their lab doing research. So deciding what information to convey and doing it in a concise manner, I feel that is extremely valuable. That was my experience as a student. And I think that's what I see. And like, okay, it's been very difficult to figure this out because the requests I get for tutorials are so incredibly scattered. I just get like random requests like every day. Hey, can you make an RPG? Hey, can you make a castle shooter or a what is it called? A defense shooter, tower defense game. Oh, how do I make a character with a jetpack? Oh, how do I make a car that flies and turns into a helicopter and goes
Oh yeah.
underwater?
Wait, Josh. The point I was trying to get at there is like all you have to like you don't have to do it, but all you'd have to do is when you do a series, you just give the general basics, and then you go into how does the expression here work? How does this work? You just do the basics, and I guarantee you it'll help you out. It's something that I know you can do because you're way smarter than I am. That's for sure. Man, you scare me sometimes.
All right, you're buttering me up now. Um, yeah, it's just like I'm trying to make the information as concise as possible because if you like, the more words you use, the less valuable your words are, and the less people are gonna keep watching. Um, I mean, people don't most people aren't watching this because they love code or they love the details of technology. They just want to make a game, and it's like, okay, how can I communicate that information to them the most effectively? So I get very extremely scattered requests. And it occurred to me this morning, actually, as I was writing some of this up, it occurred to me what's actually happening is those people are just having videos pop up on their YouTube feed. And they just see something on YouTube, and then they come to me and say, "Hey, can we get a tutorial for this?" So our requests for learning material are being dictated by YouTube's algorithm.
Wait a minute. You mentioned somebody saying to you they want to know how to make a jetpack, right?
I just made that up, but yeah,
Oh, okay, yeah, okay, something
that
like
kind
that.
of thing.
That's just a standard equation. Like you're just looking at basically in the code, you're just telling like a movement vector. Like if you just gave the basic kind of thing, that's what I was thinking would be something you could do because
Yes.
you have the skill and you can communicate it better than someone like I or anybody else here could.
The
So
way I learned game programming was with Dark Basic
Oh
initially, and then
God.
like Blitz 3D. Full screen IDE. Um, at like 640 by 480 resolution, probably 800 by 600 maybe. Yeah, probably. But
You're an old man, Josh.
so like we didn't have a lot of. I think the way like the YouTube is extremely damaging to people's attention span, and um, like I had a much more focused learning experience. I think I might have had a printed book. I'm not sure if I had a printed book for Dark Basic. I did have for Blitz 3D. But like I remember like one of the first thing like Dark Basic didn't even have collision. Like the very old version of it. And so I was like, well, I want my characters to be like able to walk around a level. I have to invent my own collision system. So one of the very first things that I had to invent was a collision system for Dark Basic. And it was very simple. It was just based on cubes, I think. And
Actually,
I remember
it's just standard polygons. You're just basically doing just the standard interaction where you're trying to create the what was it with Dark Basic? Man, this is 30 years ago almost, dude. Is it 30 years?
probably no, not 30, but
It's like what 1998?
probably probably
90,
almost 25. It was like 2002,
yeah.
I think.
That was the later revisions of Dark Basic,
I'm
which
not sure.
that was like 2002 then, I guess. Yeah.
Probably.
Going way back.
I mean, now I would just, it would be, I know everything now, but I was just starting programming for the first time. And like, I puzzled over it, and like I actually went to one of my math teachers. I was in college at the time, and I went to one of my math teachers, and I was like asking him, like, I've got this line, I need to find out where it intersects this other line, and then I need to like change the angle and retain the rest of it. Now it's like, oh, I don't remember exactly what the problem was, but it would be very easy for me to solve now.
Standard vector equation. Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. And like and when I learned 3D math, I did that mostly with a book that I bought at like Barnes and Noble, or one of those. There's that other Borders, I think. I bought a book on 3D math, and I just read the chapters that I needed and tried to relate it to like, how I knew that Blitz 3D worked. I didn't really understand like transformation space until Blitz 3D. And that's kind of how I still visualize things. But like just developing the 3D spatialization skills, that's a really important process. And I think these people who are watching, like getting everything from YouTube, they're not really like struggling and drawing diagrams on paper to understand how things work. And so they're being fed like this steady stream of very superficial content. And that's why everybody's complaining about being stuck in tutorial hell.
I agree, but Reeves right. We're only halfway through the PowerPoint. I'm sorry. I shouldn't ask you these questions because I know they're very complex questions. Just
right.
I'm gonna mute myself. Continue.
It's fine, but okay. So I'm kind of, it's like, we get a lot of requests of like, make an RTS, make an RPG, show me how to make this, show me how to make that, how to make a jetpack, how to make, a cat that shoots fireballs out of its eyes. And it's like, okay, this seems very scattered. Can we do this? Is there a better way we can do this? So I've got two tutorial series done already. I need to go back this weekend and make a few edits, but we've got the crash course, which is how to use the editor, all the different features in the editor. No programming, just how to use the editor. And then we have the programming series, which is not really game programming. It's just this is how Lua language works, how the Lua language works, and a little bit of like how it relates to, how you actually use it in Leadwerks. But it's mostly just a general programming thing, and like both of those are broken down into, I don't know, like 8 or 10 separate videos, but they're also combined. They also have a version that's combined, the combined video that, and both of them are over an hour long. Now, the next one I want to do is gameplay, and I'm going to put this between those two. And this is just going to be how to use the stock scripts that come with Leadwerks for like, doors and a trigger field to do something, changing levels, stuff like that. Just here are the stock scripts. You can just like add them to objects and adjust some properties and make gameplay that way. And for some people, that's going to be all they ever need. Some people will get by with just that. We actually saw quite a lot of games came out with Leadwerks that were just very basic scripting, and I was surprised at how much they were able to, how much like story and creative gameplay they were able to work into their games, just using very simple scripts that were already written. Especially when you combine that with the flow graph, that gives you quite a lot of power. Okay, it occurred to me that a whole series on 3D spatialization would be extremely valuable, because when people show me like these different, like what you're saying, the jetpack, well, that's just you increase the height of the player basically, or add a force pushing up. Another series on common game mechanics. This is a little bit broader, but I'll talk about that. And then an entire series on game physics. This is what I'm picturing right now, because if I can communicate this knowledge to you guys, and I guarantee you, especially like in the 3D spatialization stuff, I guarantee you there's content in there that nobody here even knows, that would be useful to you, that I could explain like without it being too complicated. I wouldn't go into too much math with that, but a little bit. So 3D spatialization, that consists of like position and vectors. It's important to know what a dot product is. A cross product is good to know. It's not as important. The tangent. This isn't trigonometry arctangent. This is game arctangent, which is you input the x and y coordinate and it gives you an angle. Color math might actually fit into here. I'm not sure, just because it's vectors. Rotation, explaining Euler angles, the problem with them, which is gimbal lock. And then the quaternions or quaternions. I need to determine like how you're actually supposed to pronounce that. Like
it's quaternions.
Quaternions, quaternions, quaternions.
Yep, it's quaternions, yes.
Quaternions, quaternions, quaternions. Okay. Axis aligned bounding boxes, like what they are and what you would actually use them for. Space transformations. This is super important. We have these commands for transforming a point, a vector, a normal, a quaternion, a plane, from one entity space to another, or from one 4x4 matrix to another. What is a 4x4 matrix? Well, you probably don't have to know what it is to program games, but I will explain to you like what all the rows mean.
Wait. That was the bit that I was going to say when you're doing spatialization I would say you would have to do if you did a series on it, because if you're just going to explain like the XYZ coordinate within a vector graph, what you really have to explain is simply the frame buffer translation layer that leads to the time graph, which is your Z or whatever other variable you want to toss in. So
I have no idea what you just said.
Stupid complex math nonsense. Doesn't matter.
Are you planning to make all this visual content too? Because a lot of customers are going to be artists who need to program. So if you could like visualize all these operations, that would be really helpful.
And by a lot of customers, do you mean you?
Well, I'm just seeing like a lot of people there, they use, well, first off, you have a lot of people who are asking you to program the game. So they're probably not going to understand this complex math. And
I'm
yes,
just
what
saying,
you,
like the way you said that, like, yeah, well, some people might be artists too, and they might. Yeah. It sounds
well,
like that's a
this is
sound.
what I was saying, Josh. Like my advice to you at this point is simply what you should do is standard operations within your engine, make a bunch of videos on YouTube about it, and then when people go, oh, help me do this thing, then you just send them, say, hey, in this video I cover how you load packages, how you do this, how you do that, and then you just leave them alone and they can do whatever the hell they want. And
Well,
that's kind of what.
it's not possible to make a video for every single command because there's like 900 of them or something like that. But I'm kind of like I'm trying to categorize like the important things that I remember like as I was learning, um, and then like how to effectively communicate that with the most. There's two goals. Like one is the highest priority information should be at the top, and then the second, because I can't communicate everything, and if I try to, then it'll just all get lost because people won't listen. And then the second thing is how to categorize it all. So camera projection, unprojection, also super important. That's how you do things like display a name of an object. That's how you display the player's name over their head. And then planes, like the plane equation is very useful. So like somebody was asking for like a top down, they were like, oh, you should make a template for a top down shooter. And I'm like, well, I mean, if they understood camera projection and plane line intersection and the ATAN function, they would already know how to do that. They would just look at it and instantly see, oh, okay, I know how to do that. So I'm kind of thinking like, I mean, if I can just like give you guys, everybody, this knowledge, it'll just turn you all into like it'll like this is probably the thing that I could do with the least amount of effort that would have the highest impact that would give you all superpowers. Okay, so
Oh, wait, you said what was it? ATAN? ATAN function.
yeah, you give it
Tangents, right? The input values and everything.
well, there's trigonometry arctangent, and then
Yeah.
there's another form of the function that I've seen a lot in games. For some reason, they always put the y coordinate first and then the x coordinate. I've just always seen it
Yes.
that way. I have no idea why.
Yes. Because some random dude in the 1980s did that when we were developing OpenGL.
Probably.
Yeah.
But that's another useful one. And then instead of I mean, if I can really communicate that, and then like, along the way, like show each of these things, like here's how you can use this, that would be extremely powerful. And like I have to go into a little bit of math, but honestly, it's like the math itself isn't that important. That's just a detail of how it works. Like I don't have all of these equations memorized by heart, and some of the stuff I don't really understand. Quaternions, I don't really understand that math. I just know how it works. It's more about like being able to visualize the 3D objects in your mind and knowing like what tools you have.
It's just language. You're converting the language into an expression. That's all it is.
So, with game mechanics, that would be another series. This is a little bit more scattered, but I'm trying to look for things that like kind of fit in this category, these are like very basic tools that you need to understand to be able to make your game. So being able to retrieve a specific entity from the scene based on the UUID that is shown in the editor when you under the object properties. World get entities. This is new in the latest version. Using this with filters. I just updated the documentation for this, but this lets you do things like retrieve all the entities with a health value greater than 1, or a health value greater than 0, and it has a weapon. That's new, but that's a pretty basic building block that I think will get used a lot. Raycasts, that's something that there's world picking, there's camera picking. That's with or without a radius, with or without finding the closest point. That's super super important. Kind of general proximity tests. This can be based on distance. It can be based on volume. Object spawning and deletion, like knowing how to create instances of an entity and then keep them in memory so they don't get deleted, and then how to get rid of them when you want to, because they're managed by another object. That's another important concept. And then pathfinding, of course, like navigation mesh pathfinding. That's definitely like a whole lesson to go into in detail. I'm looking for more things like this. So if you can think of anything that fits into this category, please let me know. Physics, that's a whole series. Mass, velocity, force and torque, collision types, using collision in an entity script, using collision as like a trigger to make something happen, performing intersection tests outside of the physics simulation, just testing the intersection between two shapes. The player physics, which is a completely separate system from the rigid body physics, but they work together. And then joints, of course. There's like 5 different joints or something like that. With constraints, motors, springs. There's a lot in there. So instead of doing these separate, like how to make an RTS, how to make your game menu, how to build an inventory system, this is more focused on like the fundamentals of game development.